For the House is that we rise and meet again tomorrow at the hour of 2 p.m. Is the House ready for the question? Agreed? Agreed. Those in favour? Aye. Motion is carried. The subject matter for late debate tonight is a resolution put forward by the Honourable Member for Hammond Plains Upper Sackville. Therefore be it resolved, this House recognize removing the HST from home electricity effective August the 1st of this year is a positive step towards making life better for Nova Scotian families. The Speaker now recognizes the Honourable Member for Hammond Plains Upper Sackville.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm delighted to be able to rise today and talk about the very, very important issue that is here before us today to all of the honourable members' constituencies right across this province. This is an issue that was certainly brought up during the most recent election campaign, and I heard it certainly day after day and week after week, door after door, meeting the various constituents that live in my riding. And I certainly know that the people of Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville are quite delighted the fact that as of October the 1st of this year that this government is going to follow through on the commitment made in the most recent campaign. And the fact is, Mr. Speaker, it certainly is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do because the HST should never have been put on the cost of home electricity, and the people. This will put money back into the pocket of the people of right across this province, and the folks out there certainly understand the issue, and so does this government. Taking the HST off home energy costs is very important. Because, Mr. Speaker, this will give the opportunity for Nova Scotians to have a little bit more money in their pocket. And, Mr. Speaker, I don't think that any of us in this House can ever say that is not a good thing. And, Mr. Speaker, it is a good thing. Mr. Speaker, shortly after taking office, this party, this government, under the genuine leadership, the leadership of our Premier, announced that the 8% HST would be removed from home electricity costs. And that's starting tomorrow, October the 1st. And that was part of our commitments to the people of the province, and it is one positive step towards making life better and more affordable for the people of this province. Mr. Speaker, we're getting into the time of year that the temperature is falling. And Mr. Speaker, we talked about many times in this House that there were people who were choosing between heating their home and feeding their children. And Mr. Speaker, again, this is a great opportunity for the people of the province. This will put money back into the pockets of the families who need it the most. Mr. Speaker, when I was out on the campaign trail, people would say, "This is important to me." And Mr. Speaker, it didn't matter what house I went to, what door I knocked on. People would always talk about that. You know what? As a candidate, they would say to me, "Thank you. Someone, finally, a party is listening to the needs of me and my family. You have a leader who understands the issues. You, as a candidate, understand the issues that face me and my family." And, Mr. Speaker, the people of Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville should know that, in fact, I do understand the issues facing those people, and this Premier understands the issues facing the people of this province. Mr. Speaker, I would like to table a news release that was dated April the 29th, 2008. And this is a news release that was put forward by now the Honourable Member for Dartmouth East. And the news release it says, and I'll quote here, it says, "Media reports today indicate the provincial budget may eliminate the HST," and this is under the former Conservative government, "rebate on portions of power bills below 27 kilowatts per day. The intent would appear to be to provide HST rebates only to those using electricity to heat their homes. While I understand the desire to keep HST rebates targeted to the heat usage, the changes reported to be proposed in the budget will increase costs for all families and will provide a disincentive for families to reduce their electrical usage." And Mr. Speaker, that I think just shows the type of idea that removing the HST off people's electricity costs, what that does, and the kind of the bipartisanship that shows. And the member at the time was a councillor in Dartmouth, and obviously supports that idea. Mr. Speaker, we have to also note that in last year's budget, the 2008 budget, or sorry, let's go back to the 2006 election. Because in the 2006 election, the Progressive Conservative Party said that they would remove the HST, the provincial portion of the HST, off home electricity costs. They did. And then, Mr. Speaker, they put that tax back on the families of this province in the next budget. And Mr. Speaker, you know, that is at the exact same time that Nova Scotia Power was asking for a 13% rate increase. And you know, Mr. Speaker, right there, that is almost a 20% increase on electricity power rates for the people of the province. And Mr. Speaker, that's unfair. So what, Mr. Speaker, this party and this government stated, because of the leadership of the Premier, is removing that 8% portion of the HST off of home electricity costs. And Mr. Speaker, it is the right thing to do. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, I have been receiving phone calls from people in the constituency that I represent, the great people of Hammonds Plains, Upper Sackville, and they're saying to me, thank you. You talked about a commitment in the campaign, you're following through on it. And it is important to every person across the province that, you know, that we do follow through on our commitments. And Mr. Speaker, as we've said many times in this House so far, that this government will follow through on the commitments of the campaign. Mr. Speaker, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to stand here and to talk about this. I remember in my address in reply to the speech from the throne, I had the opportunity to talk about two families who liked the fact that, Mr. Speaker, they were going to be receiving money to be able to give maybe, you know what, maybe a couple more liters of milk in the fridge, maybe a couple more loaves of bread, and to be able to feed their children and to help maybe their neighbor who may not have that extra money to go forward. And Mr. Speaker, I certainly enjoyed the opportunity to speak here today, and I know that I'll have many more opportunities to do so. And it's certainly wonderful to see. And I'm glad all of the honourable members opposite and here on the government side were able to stay and listen to this today. And it is a full house. It says the member for Halifax, Sable Island. Mr. Speaker, the people of the province should be aware that this government will follow through on its commitments, and we have done so because starting tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, the 8% portion of the HST is being removed from the power bills of this province. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm looking forward to hearing the members opposite in their remarks in this great resolution that talks about making life better for today's families. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for tabling this press release when I was a councillor, because it's just unfortunate he didn't characterize it correctly and just took out parts, with forgetting to mention the first part of the quote where it talks about, which was the position of the municipality, by the way, and I was the chair of the Energy Committee at the time, that it will be completely defeating conservation efforts by individuals to move it around. Basically, the municipality, this is one of two releases. We were suggesting at the time that the Tories were making it even worse. You either have to do it all the way or not at all. And Mr. Speaker, I don't deny for a second that there are people, and there are people in my own constituency who are happy to get a tax rebate. And to me, that's not what this is about. You know, I don't want to pay HST on anything. And I guarantee you that in the next 4 years, that government is going to have tabled here petitions. They're going to have petitions here asking for HST to be taken off other essentials. And there's probably a lot of merit in that. There probably is. And Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to speak against taking the HST off electricity, Mr. Speaker. What I'm going to talk about is the choices the NDP has chosen to make in doing this. The choices that some of their own supporters, who I will mention here in a few minutes, are criticizing their party for. For example, this rebate in a full year has been estimated by the government to cost $30 million. $30 million that could improve the caregiver allowance program. $30 million that could help improve community services payments. Yet the government has chosen to place this as a priority ahead of those things. You know, I'm happy. I'm happy that the member for Hammonds Plains Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville has ensured that I'm going to save about $10 a month on my electric bill. The thing is, I didn't need to save that $10, but there are people in this community who do, and many of those people don't pay an electric bill, because many of those people, on the advice of some of the staff from community services, seek out apartments and seek out rooming houses where electricity is included, so they don't get any benefit. You know, I was surprised to learn that, you know, this rebate won't apply to many people, many people in this province, including, for example, many students who attend university and have the cost of electricity factored into their residence payments. Or, as when I was at Dal, my electricity costs were included in the rent payment in the building. Not covered. Not covered at all. Rooming houses, where electricity is almost always covered, not covered. And yet these are the people who can least afford to pay those bills. But the government hasn't implemented a system that will ensure the people that need this rebate the most actually get it. In fact, it's like that $400 thing. You know, Michael Bradfield, who's a well-known, socially minded economist in Metro, who's very often supported NDP platforms and lauded them, put out a report the other week criticizing this. In fact, he said, quote, "The NDP has lowered taxes in this measure by primarily for middle and upper income people by $15 to $30 million with a policy that will affect the entire budget." Yeah, I'll table this, don't worry. He then went on to say, "These tax cuts should be offset by increased income taxes on higher incomes." So is that the next step? Because this is about social policy change. And if we want to take $30 million, in a year that we have a deficit that's closing in on $600 million, you know, and we can argue about whose deficit that is, that doesn't, at this point, that doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that this government has chosen to help people who can, help people who can better afford that amount than to target that funding at the people who often don't have an electric bill because it's included in some of the housing they have, or can least afford it. Think about that money if it was targeted to low income. Think about what that would achieve instead of what we have. You know, this government now has to find $30 million next year to meet their promise, an additional $30 million to meet their promise to balance the budget. All right? So they got to find $30 million. So let's think about what those choices might be. You could cut the Department of Fisheries 3 times, entirely eliminate it, based on this year's budget estimates, 3 times over to pay for it. You could, what else could you do? Well, you could cut the Department of Tourism, Culture, and Heritage in half. Is that the measure that's going to do to pay for this? It's about priorities and about choices. It's not, it's what is more important.
We'll wait for the next.
And then what happens, Mr. Speaker, what happens, the Utility and Review Board last year said to Nova Scotia Power that they now have the ability to use a fuel adjustment mechanism to automatically increase prices of electricity based on fuel prices within a certain range. All right. So that $10 a month is going to be gone by next year. And more importantly, the cost of that rebate is going to increase every time Nova Scotia Power engages the fuel adjustment mechanism. Every single time, which means they're not just looking for $30 million next year. They're probably going to be looking for more, and they're certainly looking for more in each consecutive year. So it's an increasing liability to the province. So why, in a case like that, would the government not have said, all right, there are people that need help in this province, and we can do a lot with $30 million. The people who will benefit most from this rebate are the people that least need our help. It doesn't make any sense when you look at priorities. The government has some strange motivations here. On the one hand, it's reducing the price of electricity. All right, let's think about what that means. The Premier on CBC television said he doesn't think that's going to lead to increased usage. The Ecology Action Centre came out and disagreed, but let's just say that's a disagreement among members. But then yesterday, the Minister of Finance is quoted in the Halifax Herald as suggesting the EnerGuide program is a good place to start cutting. The program that also helps lower income and middle income people reduce their electrical costs. And in fact, most people I've talked to who have taken advantage of that program have found that they've reduced their electrical costs or their heating costs and their other energy costs by more than $10 a month that the $30 million will provide. So the Minister of Finance wants to cut the program that saves people more money and instead cut HST off electricity. Why wouldn't you have taken $30 million and increased the EnerGuide program and made more of it grants and targeted more of it at lower and middle income families, which would have saved people more money, and it would have saved them over the long term, and it would have saved them permanently. Mr. Speaker, this is about choices. I said at the beginning, I'm not going to sit here and say that, in and of itself, taking the HST off electricity isn't a good idea, isn't popular. I don't dispute that. What I dispute is the priorities of this government. The priority should be to help the people who need the help most, and that's not what this does. In the speech from the throne, the Lieutenant Governor talked about reducing poverty as a key element for this government. And I think I said in my response that every party here, I hope, supports that and will work towards that. Well, to do that, you target your programs like this at your lower income brackets. And this is a program that is targeted mainly at higher income brackets. It just doesn't make any sense here, Mr. Speaker. And so when I look at it, there's no way I could support this motion. There's no way I can support this motion because it simply does not make sense to me at the end of the day that we would take $30 million and when you look at that over a graph, most of that money is going to go to people who are making far more money than those on community services. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the government's got to get its priorities straight. And instead of choosing easy political targets, and easy things that make people happy for a few weeks, but when their electricity goes up next year with the fuel adjustment mechanism, guaranteed they're going to be back here at the doors of the government asking them to still keep that electricity price low. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Speaker now recognizes the Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
And I'm too am pleased to rise in response to this debate presented by the Honourable Member for Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville. And I want to congratulate him. It's important to get up and speak about something you believe in. But Mr. Speaker, I also know, unfortunately, the Honourable Member, did swallow the proverbial Kool-Aid when wanting to endorse this program and to look at it. And yes, in fact, the Progressive Conservatives in the election dealt with it, and we were always forthright with Nova Scotians about staying within our means. But there is a shift that's occurred with regards to the government honouring what is politically popular, no doubt. So it's politically popular and maybe good politics, but there's no good policy behind this, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, I agree with my honourable colleague's comments with regards to those who are benefiting from it. And it is disturbing to hear of a finance minister looking for areas to cut already when trying to deliver on this $30 million promise that, unlike Keep the Heat, goes to the individuals that need the money the most. It's income tested. There isn't a single person that is in this legislature that's eligible for those programs, and nor should we be eligible for those programs, because we don't need it, Mr. Speaker. But there are Nova Scotians that do need it. And just in question period today, when the government has ignored questions, when they were talking about the $19 million for low income and talking about poverty reduction, if they wanted to take $30 million and make a real difference and put more than just a couple of liters of milk on the table of low-income Nova Scotians, they could have chose to do that, but they haven't. They went to the popular issue. And I know in the campaign, I've said it before in the House, I understood at the doorsteps people were buying this. But what they didn't get at $10 a month is they didn't know coming out of that election that they were going to get a $590 million plus deficit, which seems to be growing by the commitments and the actions of the ministers across the way, Mr. Speaker. And what they've done is they're prepaying next year's universities. They're adding hundreds of millions of dollars. So my question really for them to think about, for these children and families they say they're concerned about, they've just cost the children and grandchildren of the current generation because they've just added on to the debt burden of this province. And Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has stood here and says he will balance the budget next year. So what is he going to cut? Because he's going to have to cut hundreds of millions of dollars from line items. We've heard in public accounts today about immunization. They made promises, and we find out they're not even funded at this point from Cabinet. But Mr. Speaker, we had and have, thankfully still, a program that worked on income needs. And I do agree with my honourable colleague. If they were really interested in helping those in greatest need, they would have put an income test in place. They would have had the flexibility to deal with those citizens that bought into this plan that are not going to be included in this plan. So again, they can try to spin this however they choose. But that $30 million, Mr. Speaker, that they are now spending, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is trying to say it's going back in the pockets of the people. A short-term fix for a couple of bucks now that the rates go up, the costs are hidden, and indeed, Mr. Speaker, is not addressing the root causes with regards to poverty reduction in this province, is not helping those families greatest in need, is rewarding everyone, and that's something that we stood by to make sure we had that balance within a government. This government has lost sight of those that are in greatest in need and want the political expediency of a $30 million fix that we now find is not going to help those in greatest in need. And indeed, if they were truly concerned about the people that truly needed this assistance, they would have taken $30 million and distributed it in a more effective way. But they had to politically expedite a promise and try to get some quick fixes before they came into this chamber to try and put some shine on a government that's already tarnished coming in here. And I can tell you the shine is going quickly, and Nova Scotians are now seeing the reality. But what is true, Mr. Speaker, is Nova Scotians will be paying for decades to come because they say they're going to balance. How they're going to get from $590 million plus and then balance next year and make those types of cuts. Wait till Nova Scotians see that, because I'll be happy to go back to doorsteps. The challenge is going to be for issues like the NDP members to go back to those doorsteps when Nova Scotians find out and know, and they say to them, you misled us. You said things were going to be better. You said you were going to deliver good things for Nova Scotians, and you didn't. And they have it, Mr. Speaker. If you analyze these numbers, the NDP have misled Nova Scotians into believing they were going to provide them with some benefit. Well, it hasn't been the case, and Nova Scotians are waking up to realizing that their bills, Their everyday bills in life are going to go up because of increased debt burden in this province. Instead of stimulating the things that get the economy moving, helping those greatest in need, they went to a politically expedited process. And Mr. Speaker, what I know is when I was part of a progressive conservative government, we brought in balanced budgets, and they voted against a balanced budget this past spring.
Order.
They don't.
Order. Order. The honourable member from Cape Breton North has the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable members can wax on as much as they want, but they can't wax over the reality and mislead Nova Scotians to think that this is going to be good for them at the end of the day. Politically popular, but from a policy point of view and from helping those that need it the most, that deserve it the most. We had a Minister of Community Services today that couldn't even articulate where she is on poverty reduction, even though those members would stand here tonight to say this has been a great thing. Just think what $30 million could have done on top of the $19 million that our previous government was willing to invest within our means for Nova Scotians. But they're not even doing that. They can't even spend a deficit responsibly. They can't spend their way out of their problems fast enough. What I can tell you, and I'll predict to the honourable members, we're going to have a Minister of Finance who is going to break his word to Nova Scotians before long because he won't be able to balance another budget to come, even though he promised he would balance a budget and live within his means. And they're going to be saying to Nova Scotia, well, it's too bad we can't do that, and you're going to have to live within your means. And they're going to find out that more Nova Scotians are not going to have the means to address the issues that are priorities to them that they thought the NDP would possibly do. So, Mr. Speaker, it may be politically expedient, it may look very nice for politics, but for policy, it's wrong, it doesn't work, and it doesn't help those that deserve it the most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the honourable members that took part in tonight in an excellent debate. And that brings to the conclusion of business in the House. Well, we will come to order tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you.